ceanothus, for instance, I know you've
Mhm.
done a lot of work on ceanothus. I love, there's a quote of yours somewhere I read it, that we don't need 900 ceanothus. You know, we can do just fine with a few dozen. How do you decide yourself which the ceanothus are going to be best adapted to garden culture as opposed to just something that's really cool when you collected it?
As someone who seems to own about 900 ceanothus, um, well, really, it's funny. You can get into anything, and ceanothus are a group of plants that I've honestly had to force myself into a little bit.
Really?
I
Huh.
think of them as green things with blue flowers, and then there's a big green thing with blue flowers, and then a smaller green thing with blue flowers. And then, of course, the more you learn to know about them, there are silver ones, there are great textures, there are ones that actually do make trees, and fantastic, you know, white, pink, other things. So there's a lot more variability in them than sometimes we give them credit for. So of course it's situational. Um, One thing we've also taught people is that, or have attempted to, is that just don't water them too much. That's the main thing. They'll live a long time in general if they have tough love. If they're nurtured too much, they live hard and die young. They look really good for a while and then crash. So it's one of those things that we often use as actually part of a successional landscape, in that often doing a weather adapted garden will plant a lot of manzanitas, a lot of evergreen oaks, other things. And unlike a house, you can grow the furniture into your garden, which is kind of a nice thing. And so many things we just can't get big, but we use a lot of grasses, but things like ceanothus, we have been selecting a number of ceanothus from the wild that get particularly big. Part of it is so that we can have small street trees, 15 to 20 feet, that will be purposefully neglected because there's no other way. So they make these great little, permanent things, but they're also a great permanent hedge or instant filler between you and your neighbor as your other slower growing Mediterranean creature, reaches its size. And they fix nitrogen and all those good things.
I heard you say successional planting. I think successional planting is something that's intermediate, that you're planning to go something more climax later. Is that
Right.
a misunderstanding how you use the ceanothus?
Yeah. Well, think of your first IKEA college furniture, and then eventually you might collect a piece of sticklery or something later on. Um, the ceanothus generally are mostly pretty easy, and they're so fast and just really reward you quickly,
Right.
and often find textures, and so they can really help you create the bones of a garden quickly. And of course, some of them you want to just keep forever if you can, and they're really good plants. But we'll use them for that and furniture, but also we got to have a hedge here, and I want it full size next year. So
Yeah.
we'll do that kind of a thing. So you're busy making it hopefully look good, where the madrones and the manzanitas and the other things are just kind of slowly taking their place.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I love talking about mixing those natives in with the other plants, and they don't naturally occur together as far as the same uh, exact ecosystem, but they exist now in gardens. You can create. I'm enamored by the term I heard someone in Los Angeles use about ecotones. That ecotones in nature are where various ecosystems collide and mix it up and transition. And I think that's what gardens do. I think we can purposely make our gardens to be ecotones, where we mix plants from other areas, but still consciously allow nature to be part of it as nature looks in our own region. And I hope that's something that people start to appreciate. And I don't know if you're noticing that yourself in not just your own design business, because that way you can influence people to see things the way you want them to. But in the nursery side of
Right.
your business, are people using plants as part of ecotones, or are they using them as just little special plants they want to just have?
The answer is yes.
Both.
As people are getting into gardening, and we have an absolutely phenomenal upsurge in the number of people here. Of course, there's the houseplant thing right now, but
Oh
I
yeah.
can't tell you the number of new faces, and especially very young faces. Everybody's very young now, but very young faces that are appearing and saying, "I'm so into this."
Good.
And so, the whole thing is to try to get them off on the right track, make it as easy as possible for them to be successful with their first plants, and then they can move on and kill things like I do. But
Well, we all do.
um,
Yeah.
there is a look, and I'm really fascinated also with sort of what I would call the West Coast style or the specific horticulture style. And um, in thinking of, and doing design, you meet all kinds of flack. And, I remember uh, when they tore down some of the freeways in San Francisco, and somebody asked me, just as a consultant, if Canary Island date palms would grow. And I said, yes, they would grow. Oh, the reaction, we are not Southern California.
I remember
The
that.
date palms
Yeah.
are all over San Francisco. What's the deal? And we've had it here. Somebody wants to plant palm trees in a public situations. We are not California. Well, no, but trachycarpus do better here than in most of California, so let's plant them. So I'm kind of the opinion that if you are able to grow a certain genre of plants, you are morally obliged to.
Let me ask you sort of maybe not a final question, but your own personal interest in gardening. I know you're eclectic, you collect things, you have an active mind, you like all kinds of things, but are you seeing in your personal garden, your personal interests, things that you're getting more excited about, be it trees, bulbs, grasses, regions of the world? What personally, what is Sean Hogan interested in these days?
Well, really, it depends on time of day, time of year, whether there's caffeine or alcohol in my veins. There are a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Um, it has been, and I have a new 5 acres to play with, so I'm very lucky there. I have recently been getting maybe a little bit more out of a number of the Asian broadleaf evergreens that I really have loved, devoting a lot of space to them. But I am growing a lot more oaks, and as I think you mentioned, a lot of broadleaf evergreen oaks from both West and other Mediterranean places, and then other periodic drought places. So I think I've maxed out with trees, but they're what I stare at the most right now. And the other are some of the new borders that are finally a resting place for, well, not really a resting place, but hopefully a growing place for a lot of our new manzanitas. But they are combined with a lot of ceanothus and a lot of things like phlomis from the Mediterranean. It's a group I'm really in love with, and I'm just hoarding everything I can get a hold of. And there's honestly things like phlomis are so much easier to grow than manzanitas that it's kind of hard not to sort of concentrate on those. This weather we're getting right now will kill some manzanitas, especially in the nurseries. The phlomis are going to say, "Ha, that was interesting," and move on. So sometimes it's by default.
That work. That's a great example. The phlomis, are not native to our Pacific region.
Not even North America.
Exactly. So, but as far as the concern or interest in ecosystem services, whether or not the mycorrhiza, the pollinators, the birds get any use from phlomis as opposed to a Arctostaphylos, is that something that concerns you, or you studied, or is a big issue?
Of course, the whole idea of what local creatures use the plants we're putting in, I think, is to me very exciting. And there are some groups of plants I plant specifically for that. And for instance, Baccharis, our native coyote bush that's native from Astoria to, I think, central Baja, along the coast and a few places inland. They tend to flower all year round in different fits and starts. Everybody comes to that party. That and some of our frangula, our rhamnus.
Yeah.
You look at those in flower, and it's just like, I have never seen that thing before. So, and that's another plant that can grow even naturally where there's a seep or two. So they tend to be flowering at times later in the season than maybe they would normally. So you're getting sort of quote unquote off-season flowering. So you're getting pollination and services for things that might have a tough time elsewhere during that time of the year. And for instance, with the Baccharis, I've noticed that in Portland in January, it's often in the 40s, maybe 50s, and it's chilly. And the native little bees and wasps and things are out doing their thing. Some of the European honeybees are pretty groggy. They want to be hibernating. And yet it's just warm enough that they'll come out and pollinate a peach or something. So it's kind of nice to give the native pollinators a little bit of a leg up. They're busy having a grand old party on this shrub, and the European bees are sort of thinking, well, I could go over there. So that's kind of a nice thing, sort of observing that.
It up, so not being slavish and only having phlomis, but mixing it up, being conscious of having other plants in the design.
Absolutely.